Aloha and welcome back to segment two of the season finale of Live at the Legislature. My name is Jacob Aki, and this morning I'm joined by two representatives who are on the House Committee on Water and Land. First, we have Representative David Tarnas, who represents House District 7, which includes the areas of North Kona and South and North Kohala. Rep. Tarnas is also the chair of the House Committee on Water and Land. Second, we have Rep. Bob McDermott. Representative McDermott represents House District 40, which includes the areas of Eva Beach, Eva by Gentry, and Iroquois Point. Representatives, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's begin with discussing land use planning for sustainable development. I know there were many bills and many issues related to this topic, but in moving forward, how do we make land use planning more sustainable?
Maybe I'll jump in first on that
Yes.
one. Yeah, thanks very much, Jacob. I appreciate the question and appreciate the opportunity to be able to discuss these with you today. You know, one of the key things we have to do here in the state is to figure out how to implement our aspirational goals for an abundant, sustainable future for Hawaii. And to do that, I really felt it was important to make some institutional changes, administrative restructuring, to be able to integrate sustainability principles into our land use decision-making process. So we did that by passing two bills. One of them was to consolidate the Land Use Commission with the Office of Planning and rename the Office of Planning as the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. We also brought over the Office of Environmental Quality Control into this new Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. So by doing that, we've included the sustainability coordinator for the state with the land use planning, with the land use commission, with the coastal zone management program, all of these into one office. And the Office of Environmental Quality Control is going to be there also. So it really prevents this, you know, separation of silos and gets people to work together better. It'll be streamlining things, and I think that will help a great deal. And I have to acknowledge Representative McDermott, who's been a great member of the committee, working together on these issues to get government to be better designed to implement these important goals.
Representative McDermott, administrative reform was really a focus of the legislature during this past session. Do you think that government reform in the area of land management was critically needed?
Well, first, good morning. Thank you, James and Olelo crew for inviting us. I first want to say that Representative Tarnas has been the most proactive chairman I've ever seen with regard to water and land use management. He just talked about two issues there, sustainability and reorganizing the infrastructure. He's the expert. I mean, he's got a handle on this, and he's been an environmentalist since I met him back in '96 when we both came here many years ago. So he's done a great job. I was surprised to see how many resolutions that we passed, House concurrent resolutions. And I asked him why, and he was explaining to me to get these departments to move, to take action so the citizens can get a resolution to whatever that dispute is.
You know, everyone in our state is concerned about managing our coastal areas and the issue of sea level rise. There were a number of bills that were passed this session to work on these issues. Maybe we'll start with you, Representative McDermott. Which bills stand out for you in regards to this issue of coastal areas?
Well, let me confess something. I've been a skeptic to a degree until this weekend. There's at the end of a cul-de-sac, I live in Eva Beach, and there was a 3-foot seawall there, and it had been there for 20 years since I moved in. It's gone now. The ocean ate it. It's gone. It wasn't a freak storm. It was just the sea level was rising. This is in Eva Beach. The street was flooded. A constituent called me down there, and David, I'd like to meet with you and talk about this street offline. I want to bring you out there and show it to you. It's unbelievable. So with regard to what particular bills, I don't memorize the bill numbers. We have so many, but I will say that Representative Tarnas did a fantastic job leading the committee in a very workmanlike fashion, and we dispatched a myriad of issues in front of us.
And let me build on that. Thank you, Representative McDermott, for your acknowledgement there. And you're absolutely right. We're getting flooding issues happening in our residential and commercial areas, even without a storm, even without high surf. We're starting to see that happening. So what we needed to do was just to make sure that if anyone is considering to purchase a piece of property, that the real estate agent needs to disclose to them if it's within a sea level rise exposure area, it's at risk of being flooded, so that the buyer is fully aware of the risk when they purchase a property. So it's really a consumer protection bill, and it protects the real estate agent as well, so that everyone knows the facts. We use the sea level rise viewer online, which models different sea level rise amounts, so you can see where your property is and the risk that you're willing to accept. The second bill we passed was to direct all the different state agencies to look at all of their infrastructure and their facilities and find which ones are vulnerable to impacts from sea level rise, and then prioritize them and make a report to the legislature so that we can figure out what are we going to do to adapt to sea level rise so we can reduce the damage to our public infrastructure and facilities. So those are two major bills that we moved through. There's a number of others, but I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Marine resource management is really critical for maintaining our fishery. What was done during the session for resource conservation enforcement and regulating commercial fishing gear and the taking of or the overtaking of many of these species? Maybe we'll start with you, Representative Tarnas.
Oh, thanks very much. You know, we wanted to strengthen our conservation resource enforcement folks, their capacity. So we did pass a bill which would allow them to inspect coolers and your bags of fish or tanks of fish that you caught, just to make sure that you're in compliance. We also passed a bill that allows for a commercial fishing boat to get a license for the entire vessel, for everyone who's fishing on that vessel to be covered by that single commercial marine vessel license. It's been something that the commercial fishers have been asking for many, many years, and we were finally able to get that through. We also passed a first recreational fishing license bill. This is only for non-residents, but it's going to be a good practice for us to set up a fishing license, which we don't have in Hawaii. And it's time that we do this so that we understand who's catching fish and where. We've also authorized DLNR to regulate lay nets, which are a really important gear that we need to be able to regulate better so that it doesn't cause negative impacts by catching fish or protected species in areas that are their nurseries, for example. And then finally, I'll just mention a couple more. We did pass a bill finally after many, many years, which regulates the take of sharks. It gives them greater protection, and that's something that many folks in the community really wanted. But we also provided a means for fishers to continue to capture shark, but have to be done by permit, and there are certain restrictions within that permitting. We set up an ocean stewardship fund, which I think is going to be an important one, where we get visitors who go out on ocean tours to contribute to this fund. I acknowledge Rep. McDermott didn't really want to add more fees to our visitors, and I appreciate that input. There was some skepticism about it, but it is part of an overall trend that we're trying to, have visitors pay their fair share to protect our resources.
Let's go to that issue, because I know over the past session there were a lot of action done in terms of trying to manage our natural resources, more specifically our state parks. Across the state, we've seen in 2018 when Haena on Kauai started to charge visitors going into their park. In March 1st, Wain Napa Napa in Hana. Representative McDermott, I know you may not have been the biggest fan on implementing these visitor fees for the park. Can you maybe share some of the concern that you have with this type of management model?
Well, I think Dave's done a great job. I just have a personal issue as with new fees and new charges that we put on people, and it's not an assault on David. He's trying to figure out how to pay for this stuff, right? So he's trying to figure out how to raise revenue to pay for the ocean stewardship and the things they want to do. I understand that. I respect it. I don't make a big deal of it. I just vote no because I think it's a real challenge to the visitor coming here. If they're going to have to buy a fishing license, unless they go on a commercial vessel, then they're covered which was a great move on his part by the owner. He's got the single umbrella license. If they don't, I'm not sure that they're actually going to go buy the license. And where would they go fishing if they're not going with a commercial vessel, unless they go to Lake Wilson or something? I don't know. So, and who would want to? They should pay you to fish in there. You have to pay for the privilege. He did a great job, and he's a great committee chairman. I just vote no on the fees. I try to be a check there just to remind everybody. That's all.
Thank you. Representative Tarnas, what is your thought? Because, some of the numbers that I saw recently was that in the first month at Wayanapa State Park, the park garnered over $100,000 in parking revenue. Do you think this is the type of management model the state needs to better preserve our natural resources while trying to manage the amount of tourism and the impact that they have in those specific areas?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jacob. And, having a parking lot where you can limit the number of folks who are coming in to park is an important management tool to limit the numbers of people that come to a destination like Hyanna, or you mentioned several of them, where they're beautiful places, iconic places that visitors want to come to, but they're being overrun. So to better manage them so that we don't exceed the carrying capacity of these places, having a parking lot that you can limit the number of parking and you can limit the number of people is important. But we have to be able to do pricing based on demand. And to do that, we call it dynamic pricing. We needed to authorize the DLNR to do that, where they could actually modify the fees based on the demand, holiday schedule, or reduce the fees for residents during times when there's not a lot of visitors around, so that we can balance it both ways. So we authorized DLNR to do this dynamic pricing, where they are able to do this through administrative approval instead of having to go out for public hearings. It's still a public process, so it still has public review and comment, but it's much more efficient. And that was a big move that we were able to do this year. And I think that's the sort of thing we're trying to build capacity, give more tools to the DLNR to better manage our state parks, our forests, so that we can take care of the environment, not let it be overrun by visitors, so that we can maintain our quality of environment and quality of life, which is so important as we rebuild our economy.
In the state budget, HB 200, a large amount of funding was allocated to the Department of Land and Natural Resources for things like managing invasive species. I know a good amount of money was also allocated specifically to control the issue of rapid ohia death. How important is it for us, especially during these fiscal times, to make sure that we have resources to deal with the problems related to invasive species?
Well, I can jump in on that. It's important. Obviously, we don't want to be overrun with invasive species, the brown tree snake, or anything else. I would like to mention that one of the things David has tried to deal with, or my observation, is that balancing the visitor industry demands, and do we have 10 million visitors? Because what does that 10 million visitors do to our natural resources? We look at Hanama Bay. When they close it down, it regenerates, right? Nature takes care of that. So the balance and I found that as a theme running through all of our discussions, how big do we want this visitor industry, and balancing that against our natural resources? And as David said, we don't want them trampled, right? And that's happened in some cases. So he's always tried to find a balance, and that's been very difficult because we don't have a consensus on that yet, other than we want less and we want them to spend more. But other than that, we don't have the number, right? So,
Representative Tarnas?
Yeah, let me just say that it's important for us to figure out how to deal with this rapid ohia death. It is causing devastation in our forests, and it's a fungus that moves quickly. We need to figure out how to control it. So I was very grateful to get the funding for that. We have about 875,000 going into research into controlling rapid ohia death, and it's now all over the state, not just here on Hawaii Island. We also put in a substantial investment into watershed management, which is really important. It's not just to protect the trees, but it's to keep the soil on the ground rather than when it rains, it doesn't just run off and go into the streams and into the ocean and smother the coral reef. You know, it's Mauka to Makai, that's all connected. And we're really recognizing that in our budget, which I'm very grateful for. And let me mention one other thing. You know, as things warm up, the mosquitoes start to spread. And the mosquitoes are causing significant negative impact on our native birds. So we need to do something better to control mosquitoes. And so we passed a resolution trying to get the DLNR and Department of Ag to use some new techniques in large-scale mosquito control so we can protect our forest birds. So these are the sort of things that we really need to do to protect our forest environment and our entire ecosystem.
We have about 90 seconds left, but a lot of important work was done in the Water Atlantic committees in both the Senate and House during this past session. Is there any other issues or any other bills that you think residents should know about that may not have been highlighted in the news or in the other media outlets?
I'll jump in real quick. You know, we did several bills related to protecting agriculture and addressing some of the challenges that we have in balancing land use and agriculture, strengthen our farm to school program to try to get more locally sourced food into our schools. I mean, all of those things I think are going to make a big difference. But let me hand it over to Rep. McDermott for the final word there. And again, I really appreciate his work on the Water and Land Committee.
Well, thanks, Dave. But with Representative Tarnas leading the committee, you just hold on for dear life and vote yes most of the time. You can see he's got a grasp of the subject matter, and it's clearly his passion, and I appreciate that. Dave, though, I would like to meet with you sometime to go out to Eva Beach. I want to show you this because the guy took a video of it, the wall when it got knocked down. He was videotaping this surge. Unbelievable. And now they have a situation where there's no wall at the end of this street, goes right to the ocean. So the discussion with him was, how do you get a permit? All the practical stuff that you deal with, right? The department deals with. It was built in 1957, no permit. So how do you even begin to grapple with that? And then all the various agencies, so you got to get them all in the same sheet of music, right? And so I'll be in touch with your office, though.
Let's do it. I'll call you. We'll work on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. We are out of time. And for those of you at home, thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you next year on Live at the Legislature. Aloha.
Thanks.
Great job, guys.